And welcome and thank you for joining us for this Learning and Growing 2021 presentation, Trust, Improving Learner Engagement. My name is Danny Shapiro and I'm on the marketing team here at Hawks Learning. Our speaker for today is Professor John Dalzell. Professor Dalzell is an adjunct instructor of business ethics at Northern Oklahoma College. Prior to this role, he spent 8 years teaching and coaching within the Oklahoma public school system and over 30 years at Ditch Witch. During his time with Ditch Witch, he served as the Director of Human Resource Development, Manager of Corporate Training, and Manager of Ditch Witch Training, as well as the Director of Ditch Witch University Online Learning Center. Professor Dalzell earned both his BS in Business Administration and Master's in Business Education at Oklahoma State University. He's been married for over 50 years and is a proud father of 3 and grandfather of 15. We are so excited to have Professor Dolezal here with us today to share his experience and insight. We will have a live Q&A session at the end of the presentation, so please enter any questions into the Q&A box as we go. A reminder that this webinar is being recorded and we will share the recording with all attendees once the video is processed and ready. And on that note, I will go ahead and hand it over to you, Professor.
Okay, well, thank you, Danny, and I want to thank Hawks Learning for this privilege and honor to be able to present today. I am bound and determined to try to do a good job of relaying some information I think can be very helpful. A lot of it was gained with empirical research and bumps and bruises along the way, but it relates back to some things that I learned while in business and in public education. And I continue to learn about improving learner engagement now that I'm teaching business ethics at Northern Oklahoma College. I want to thank the participants today for sacrificing a valuable resource, which is their time. And I hope to do a good job of engaging you as we go through the presentation. And I wish I could see your faces or be there present with you to get a gauge on your engagement. I'll have to trust that as we go through the information at the end, we'll measure whether or not I did a good job of getting your engagement and passing you on some information that's helpful to you as we do an evaluation, or Danny and them do an evaluation and get feedback, and with your question and answers. I wanted to start the presentation off with a little bit of background information beyond what Danny was able to share. Years ago, while I was working with the Ditch Witch organization, I was sitting at my desk one afternoon and I got a phone call, and I could see on the caller ID of that inside phone that it was our CEO and founder calling me. So some nervousness automatically set in. I experienced fear of the unknown, which meant that I started to think that something bad had happened or something bad was going to happen. So our CEO asked me if I would come to his office. He wanted to visit with me. So his office was approximately 75 feet or so from my office, and I went down that 75 feet, nervous all the way, went inside and said, "Yes, sir, how may I help you?" And he said, "Well, I've got some news to share with you. I've got some good news, and then I've got some news that you may perceive not so good. And which would you like first?" And I told him, I said, "Well, I think I better have the good news first." And he said, "Well, from this day forward, you don't report to anybody in the company, including me, the founder. You have complete freedom and independence and to do what you need to do." And I thought, well, that sounds pretty good. You know, all of us like freedom and independence so we can be creative and be ourselves and do what we need to do. And I said, "Well, what's the not so good news?" And he said, "Well, the not so good news is from this day forward, nobody in the company, including me, report to you. So you have no organizational authority per se." And I thought about that for a quick second. I thought, well, that doesn't sound all that bad, I guess. I'm just not sure what that means. And so we had a short conversation, and with me thinking just a little bit about it, I asked him, did he have something in particular he wanted me to do? And he said, "Well, I'm an engineer and I can draw things on the floor and design things to be built, but that's the tangible world. And you seem to understand and have the talent to understand the intangible world. And what we need to do or wanting to do is improve communication and trust and teamwork in our organization. And so you've got complete freedom to go about your business to try to do that. Well, needless to say, I went back and had to tell my current boss that I was reporting to that I didn't report to him anymore or anyone. I had to go around in the company and try to find a location where I could sit at a desk. And then I went into some serious thinking for a few days to try to figure out exactly what it is I was supposed to do or how to go about it. I quickly recognized that I was being asked to serve as an internal change agent. But to change an organization of that size, which is about 1,200 employees at that time, without any authority in the company was definitely going to be a challenge. And after reading some books and doing a little research and thinking for myself, I came to the realization that the only power that I did have was my personal power, and that influence would be the key, and that if I wanted to gain engagement of people, so that we could all change and improve trust, communication, and teamwork, I was going to have to rely upon my personal influence ability. And so that's where I probably first came across the best opportunity to learn all about engagement of others and how to gain that engagement without totally relying upon power or control. Let's take a look at what we're going to talk about here in the next few minutes. And hopefully you'll be able to gain some fresh ideas on how to improve getting engagement and sustaining engagement with learners, students, and others. First, we'll talk briefly about what is trust. We'll look a little bit about what does trust have to do with learner engagement. We'll talk about trust as the fact that it goes both ways in the teacher-learner relationship. Well, lastly, we'll talk a little bit about, well, how do we increase our consciousness and our competency? Because performance in a business organization or as a professor or instructor relates to my ability to do something and to know something and to do something at certain standards. So the consciousness part, we're going to talk about learning some things about trust and trust building. And then the competency part, we'll talk a little bit about, well, how do we put that to work in practice? First, what is trust? Here's Webster's dictionary about reliance upon character or ability. Secondly, dependence on something in the future or contingent hope. Lastly, reliance on future payment for something delivered. The way I like to think about trust is I first think about a fear of the unknown. When my students are first into class at the first of a semester or something, it doesn't take a lot of intelligence to realize that there's going to be a lot of unknown for them, and therefore there's going to be a lack of trust. And so we'll talk a little bit about how do we establish that trust quickly and how do we apply that so we gain trust and sustain it, because trust is what's going to allow us to maximize or optimize the amount of attention or engagement we get while we're teaching or while they're doing the work. It's all about economics and exchange of value. Economics is just a study of how individuals make decisions given the principle of scarcity. Students make their decisions about how to use their time or what standards to do their work and how much of that work to do and when to turn it in. What's required of them to receive an A if they want an A in class or whatever it might be. So there's things of value that they have to sacrifice, but there's things of value that they want. But there's always scarcity because human beings, all of us, including students and teachers, have unlimited wants and needs, but there's limited resources to satisfy those wants or needs. I teach business ethics, and early on in the semester, I asked the students to indicate to me what kind of grade would they like to receive. And we talk about that a little bit, and then I let them know what kind of performance I need from them. So I tell them it's all about exchange of value. If they require me to give up all the value in grading their papers, finding their emails, knowing what class they're in, preparing to deliver instruction, observing and giving them feedback, and grading their papers, all this stuff requires time and effort and intelligence on my part, then I expect value in exchange. And so we talk about that, and we'll visit about that here in just a minute. Teachers and learners have unlimited wants and needs. The needs and wants require resources, and the resources are limited. Therefore, we experience scarcity. Exchange of value, teachers and learners both value resources they believe will help satisfy their needs and wants. Easy example I use, as Danny mentioned, my wife and I are blessed with 15 grandchildren. And over the years, as those grandchildren have been born and we've been around them, I take the opportunity occasionally to take some of them to the dollar store. And I tell them they're each going to have $1, and they're going to be able to go into that store and buy something that they not necessarily need, but that they want. And yet, when they walk in the store, the younger ones immediately go to the first item they see. That's something they want real bad. And they'll say, Papa, I want to buy this. I want this. And I'll tell them, well, that's fine. You can have that, but watch your older brothers and sisters. And I think that they're going to tell you that they've learned to experience taking a little bit of time to see if there's something of more value that they want in the store. And so we go through that exercise, and it's fun to watch them and observe them. I do the same thing with students from time to time. I'll share with them that I'm going to give out either a little bit of extra credit, or I might be lenient on a certain assignment or something, but I'll tell them what they've got to exchange in value to receive that opportunity and that benefit. The teacher and the learner, through the education relationship, both of us as human beings strive to optimize the value we receive while minimizing the value that has to be exchanged. That's just pretty common, and it's human nature to do, and not just ask that the teachers or the learners or students are aware of that, that I recognize that they'd like to do as little work as possible to receive an A and everything that goes with that A. I would like for them to do more than what they want to do, and do more sometimes than required to get an A. So it goes back and forth. It relates to both. Teacher and learning require resources. Both parties, the teacher and the learner, both have to sacrifice time, and that's one of the most valuable resources. I tell the students everything they do or don't do takes time, including doing nothing. If they sit in a class for an hour and they don't take notes, or they don't ask questions, or they don't give me feedback through body language or eye contact, that they're paying attention and that they're trying to learn, it's still requiring time, and there's only a limited amount of time. For teachers especially, and for students, there's some cost to the university or the college for my pay and for the materials and the equipment and the classroom and everything that we use in that classroom. And for the students, they have tuition and room and board and food and living expenses that they have to sacrifice and come up with. I tell the students, I could give them a lot of just information, but I assume that they would value quality information, more factual information, and more information that meets their particular needs and applies to a real life that they're experiencing today, and that they're going to experience as they go into the business world and work. We all value assistance, and so that's something else that's a resource that's important, and it requires trust if we're going to get much assistance. And naturally, I like the effort and the attention of the students, and I want them to know that I'm willing to give them full attention as I'm instructing or trying to help them in the class. So what does trust have to do with learner engagement? Well, trust is the greatest of all resources. It's demanded in all relationships, including teachers and learners. And I ask the students about that, and I say, do they feel like trust is important? And they'll all raise their hand or say, yes. I ask them why, and they're not really sure how to answer that question. They just said, it's important. And I try to explain to them it's because it's the greatest resource. Without trust, we get very little of any other resource. If I don't have trust with the students, I'm not going to get much of their time. They're going to come to class and spend that class period with me, but they're not going to dedicate and try to stay around after class or come early and spend time with me so I can be a resource to them if there's no trust. They're not going to fully answer questions openly in front of other students. They're going to withhold sometimes because there's no trust. Without trust, we don't get any time, we don't get any of their assistance, we don't get any of their full attention. So trust, and it goes both ways, is the most valuable resource. So how do we increase the competency for creating and growing trust with the learner? It's what I call trust building skills. I found it interesting when I left the business and industry profession and went into college teaching. It made me stop and recognize and recall that trust and effective communication are the two most important skills. They were the two most important skills in business. They were the two most important skills when I served as a teacher and a coach in public school system. And today, in our relationship with my wife, my grandkids, with other people, trust and effective communication are the most important skills. But I went through 12 years of public school system, and I went through 5 years of higher education to get a master's degree. And I've been working now off and on continuously for 40 some years, and no one has formally ever educated or trained me on how to build trust. So one of the things I do in my business ethics class, one of the lessons that I present is trust building skills. And I think it's important for students to know, not only in the classroom, be able to relate to what I'm trying to do with them on exchange of trust, to get their full engagement and for them to have mine, but also for the fact that when they enter the business world or other relationships, whether they're social relationships or not, trust building skills are important. So what are those trust building skills? First is propriety. Propriety, I use similar words, I guess, to express it. It's like being proper, but it's related to being proper, meaning that does the other party, the learner in this case, if I'm the teacher, does the learner experience for me the proper identity matched up with my title? If I'm a professor or I'm a college instructor, does it match up with what they first experienced of what a good college professor should look like and act like and be like? Kind of the same way, I tell them, if they say they want to be an A student, I've got a filter in my mind. I think I know what an A student looks like and what they should act like and what kind of work they should turn in. If there is propriety, there's going to be trust automatically. An example I would use there, it happened in our family years ago. Our oldest daughter came downstairs and I was in the living room and she came up by me and said, "Dad, do you have a minute?" And I said, "Well, yeah, what's going on?" She said, "Well, you know, my birthday's tomorrow. I'll be 16. And you and Mom had told me when I turned 16, I could go out on my first date." And I, of course, laughed and said, "Well, I don't think I would tell you that. I was thinking you needed to be 40. But if your mom told you that, then I'm going to back her. And you're going to be 16 tomorrow. So are you here to ask me about you going out on a date?" She said, "Yes." And naturally, I'm trying to establish propriety with who this person is and she's going out with, because it's going to demand a lot of trust for me to let my daughter go with him. And so I asked her, I said, "Well, do I know him?" And she said, "No, I don't think you know him, but you're going to like him." And I said, "Well, Amy, be careful, because you just established the propriety. And if I experience something that I don't like, there's not going to be any trust. Therefore, I probably won't give you the keys of the car and my credit card the first date. I'll have to know something about the individual." Credibility is an important trust building skill. Tell the students, used to years ago, you could go to an airport and get a rental car and you could pay cash or a credit card and get a rental car as long as you had a driver's license. Today's world, they're going to expect a credit card as credibility for your ability to pay. And that's because if you run off with a car, they think they have the means to collect the money through your credit card. So credibility is important. The students, yeah, they're going to have to fill out a resume and take it to their first job interview. That's part of credibility. But I ask them to consider also credibility can come is if you'll show them instead of just tell them why you're credible, show them by your actions or by a presentation or something that you can do. But credibility leads to believability. That helps address the fear of the unknown and it helps build trust. Competence is the ability to do something. I tell the students early on, you want an A in class and you say you've got credibility because you're a sophomore and this is for sophomores and on up, and you've got that, you're enrolled in college, so you've got credibility to be a student. But my question is, are you going to be able to show me the competence that you have to be able to be an A student if that's what you want to be? It takes certain things, but the faster you show me you're able to turn in work on time, you're able to ask questions in a way that I can understand and relate to. You do the work that's required of you. You do it to the standard that's being asked. And the faster you do that, the more trust there is. Commonality. Commonality is expressing to somebody else what you have in common with them. I tell the students that while I may be quite a bit older than they are, and I've already graduated from college, I do have some things in common with them. I am a human being. I have been a student before. I might like the same football team they like. I might have a family and they might be from a family. I communicate about that so that they know we have something in common. An example I use there to drive home the point is I asked them, we're close to I-35 here in Oklahoma, and I asked the students if they've ever driven on I-35 from here to Oklahoma City, and if they have they ever seen a car broke down on either side of the road? And they'll all raise their hands if they've seen a truck or a car broke down on the side of the road. I asked them, well, how many of you would stop? And nobody raises their hand anymore, which I understand that. But I asked them, well, what if that car was white and it had a Northern Oklahoma College sign on it? Would you think about stopping then? And they all were like, well, yeah. Well, that's the strength of commonality. The fact that you think you have something in common with somebody else or another situation makes you have trust, and you're a lot more comfortable to give up value. Empathy is another trust building skill. It has to be communicated. I tell my students that we all have challenges and problems. I know that happens in life. I understand that. And I understand that it's uncomfortable to wear a mask today in class. I let them know that it's uncomfortable and difficult to do an assignment when they don't have a previous education on the subject matter. And I communicate empathy in the fact that things are going to happen and it's not going to always work out. That's just the way life is with everybody. But just the fact of me communicating that I see and I understand their situation, it helps build trust as well. I'm amazed when I go into various businesses around Oklahoma, especially, I guess, or anywhere. You walk into business, most of us are there because we have a need or a situation, or we wouldn't be there. And so it's just amazing, though I don't hear a lot of cases where individuals who work in that business, I won't hear them communicate the words I see and I understand. And that means they're trying to handle somebody else's problem, but the person they're trying to communicate with perceives that there's a lack of interest or lack of care. So just communicating the words I see and I understand lets people know you have empathy. The last one is intent. I tell students when they send me an email, it helps build trust and understanding for me as if in the first line of that email, they let me know what's the purpose of the email. Because I let them know that if they're going to contact me by email or phone call or other ways, they're typically contacting me because they want or need something. But if I don't read that early on in the email, I've already made the assumptions that's what they want, and I'm less hesitant to volunteer help because it's unclear exactly what they want. So the intent is purpose. When they call on me and when I call on them and assign them a paper, I'll tell them the purpose of the document or paper or assignment. And when they type up the document as casework or something and turn it into me, I like to see in the first paragraph, they communicate what's the purpose of the document and what is it they're trying to show me? What evidence are they trying to show me in that document? So these are trust building skills. They're something that I think are very helpful in getting learner engagement and sustaining it because they build trust. And again, attention, the student's attention is very valuable. If I get 10 minutes of students' full attention during a 50-minute session, that's outstanding and it's very valuable. But if I don't apply these skills or have trust with them, I'm probably going to get them in class physically, but I'm not going to have very much, if any at all, engagement or attention. Some other things that are important, I won't go over them here, but they're called adult learning principles. I learned this in the business and industry area. Our students are adults and there's some things they expect. They want things to be for their reasons, not mine. So as much as I like to give them information and lecture and give out assignments and be around them and all that, they're in class for their own reasons and they're going to learn for their own reasons. So I've got to be aware of that and try to figure out, well, what's their reasons? What is it they're trying to accomplish, their goal for their career or their goal in college, and how to connect to that. They want to be respected. They like empathy. and they like real life examples. So a lot of times they may get a little tired of it, but I use a lot of human life examples or examples I've seen in business or in sports where I've been a coach, and in my own family and family life. And they seem to be able to connect, especially if the information I'm communicating to them is new to them and complex. Then they need real life examples that they can connect to. And that's an adult learning principle, and they are adults. This last is just a little ad. I don't know. It's just, I always ask people, do they want to learn some more about adult learning principles? At some point in time, you could let Danny know or someone else, but if you have the opportunity to get in any kind of class or read a book or something on adult learning principles, I think it's very helpful. And those, along with trust building skills, will definitely help you improve learner engagement. Appreciate your time, Danny. At this point in time, I'm finished. My email address is below, and you're welcome to email me directly if you have any questions or I can be of any service to you. Other than that, I'm going to turn it over to Danny, and Danny, you can handle any questions and things that you want to.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much for the presentation. Like Professor Dolezal said, we'd love to open it up for questions. You can use that Q&A box there, and I'll relay anything that comes through. One question that I had for you going through the presentation is just curious how your students react to that. It seems like this is something that you work with them on throughout the entirety of the semester, but something that you really try to hammer home at the start. How does that conversation go? How do they react?
Initially, my first class each semester, I start off introducing myself, and then the very next statement I tell them is it's all about exchange of value. And I'll tell them that they've got things of value for me because I need their attention. I need their work turned in. I need their feedback so I can do a better job of instructing. And from me, they need my full attention. They need quality instruction. They need my assistance on certain assignments and things like that. It's all about exchange of value. And if I look up and you're turning in work late by email and I'm having to deal with that email and print off your assignment and figure out what class you're in and all this stuff, it's taking a lot of value on my part of time and attention and effort and requiring me to have to print off on my own printer at home and everything. So therefore, it's going to be difficult for me to understand why you're qualified to be an A student in here. And so they start to understand that. I talk to them about the brain, or way our brain works. My understanding is, a computer analogy, our brain works at about 150 million bits of data per second. And so their brain works the same way as mine and has as much capacity or more. We only use about 20% of our brain's capacity. I can only speak at about 150 or 200 words a minute. So I'm smart enough to know the students are going to sit in class and their brain still has the ability to think of other things like, when's the class going to be over? What's he talking about? What are we going to eat for lunch? So I've got to do a good job of getting more of that brain's attention, and therefore that's the quality of instruction I'm going to give. And it kind of goes both ways. So I don't know, Danny, it's more about, I started off early, and then about the second week, I teach them trust building skills. And then I start to give them feedback as they turn in assignments or send me email. I'll say, did you build trust there or not? The way that email reads, I still don't know what you're wanting. And so if you want to build trust with me, I need to know what the intent is. And I need to be treated with respect, and I'll treat you with respect. So I kind of just keep working on it as we're going through the semester. And really, I'm going to say 90% of students appreciate it, and they start taking notes on that because they know that trust building and communication are going to be the most important skills when they go in a business and go to work.
Well, to follow up on that, we're starting to get some questions here from the audience coming in. What do you do about students who always have a serious excuse, that are always coming to you with something that seems very serious?
You know, again, first thing I do is I try to listen, stop and listen. If I'm working on something after class, trying to close down the computer or do other things, I just turn my chair away from that and look at the students and try to have some eye contact that's comfortable. And the first words I typically say to them after they've told me that they've got this problem or they can't get to this document or that whatever it is, they had a flat tire, whatever. I typically start out by saying, I see and I understand. I tell them I've had a flat tire before. There's been something come up sometimes and I'm late to class. So I understand all that. But then I typically turn right around and say, how may I help you? I tell them the example of when I go into a Walmart store and I'm going up and down the aisles and somebody turns to me and says, well, do you need some help? I want to turn to him and said, no, I just drove 60 miles, come over here and look around and have a good time in Walmart. Yes, I need some help. So I always tell the students I'm going to teach them by example. So when they tell me that, I turn to them, say, I see and I understand. I give them an example of how I understand. And then I use the word may. How may I help you? That kind of forces it back on them to think things through, realizing that that's an opportunity for them, but they've got to be specific and be able to answer the question. That's what I'm asking them about. So that's kind of the way I handle it.
Similar to that, how do you handle the explanation from students who say, I'm required to be here?
They're required to be there. I see and I understand. I am too. I'm an instructor. I've got a contract signed with the college, and part of that expectation and duty is for me to be here and be here on time. So I understand and can relate to that. And I'm sorry you feel that way. My job is to try to help you understand if there's something you could learn in here that can help you in this class, but also help you outside. So I just ask them if they're willing to be open to that and look for opportunities for me to make the material something that would be useful to them in class and outside of class. That's what I want to do.
All right, thank you. Another question is, how do you reestablish trust with learners who have gotten off to a poor start in the course?
That's a great question. And I have that. And I've got 2 students this semester in one class that have been off to a slow start. In fact, one of them missed 5 out of the first 7 classes. The other one didn't turn in their work on time for the first 5 assignments or whatever. But again, what I try to do is I will wait till class is over. If they're in attendance, I won't embarrass them in front of everybody else. I'll just walk up to them before they're leaving class and say, hey, if you have a minute, I'd like to visit with you for a minute. I think I can help you. And so they've got enough respect that they stay. And I just tell them, I go, this is all about exchange of value. And I'm assuming you want an A grade in this class. If you want an A, that's going to take more value and more commitment, sacrifice from you, but it can be done. But if you're just wanting a C or a D in here, there's still going to be requirements that you can do. And if you're not going to finish this class, I need to know up front, even though I'm going to give them the option of dropping the class. I very seldom will drop a student from class because I've seen some students start off real slow. The more they get comfortable with me and have trust for the class and for what I'm trying to do with them, they typically will turn the corner and start doing their work.
We have another question here, a little bit tying in with your background as a coach. And this instructor says that they found that student athletes, among others, are sometimes overly tired and preoccupied. Do you engage with them any differently because they have so much on their plate?
Again, and I've got some of those athletes in my classes this semester again. And I just communicate. I try to communicate with them empathy, first of all. I've been an athlete, I've been a coach, I've been in business, and I've been a student. And so I understand how tired you can be, how much stress you're under, the load that you feel like you've got on yourself. My job is to figure out a way, whether it's before class or after class or through email. I'll even volunteer with those individuals, not just the student athletes, that if for some reason they feel uncomfortable of being in front of me or around me before class or after class, and if they feel like they can't communicate what they want to communicate via email, which I definitely understand, the written or spoken word is only 5% of the meaning. Well, then therefore I ask them for permission to visit with them over the phone if they would like, and I volunteer to give them my phone number if they'll give me theirs. And sometimes I find that helps a little bit, that they will call and I'll talk to them a little bit and just start getting to know them a little bit more, ask them kind of what's going on, what can I do to be of help to them to have the time they need in this class to do what they need to do. And again, it's not a perfect world. I don't have full trust with all the students that I deal with. but I definitely have more engagement and trust with more of them than I would have had 25 years ago before I understood the value of all these skills. And so I think it's just really helped me a lot. And I go back to the role that I played as internal change agent. If you can imagine 1,200 people, I walk out of there, and first of all, I didn't have any identity anymore. Going into that meeting with our founder, I was called a manager of corporate training. But since I no longer had any power or authority in the organization and didn't have any power governing me, I didn't have any identity other than my name. And so the first people I saw would be some of the friends that I worked with or whatever, and they'd ask me kind of like, well, what are you doing, or what's your title? And I'd say, I don't have a title yet. I'm gonna make one up. But you have to, so I realized that if I was going to get anybody to come to a class, learn how to build professional development plans, learn how to do strategic planning, learn how to be more effective at communication, that's all change. And so it was all about change management and trust. I just started building trust building skills. So I just go up to them and use my influence or something, say, hey, would you at least be willing to spend 30 minutes with me at a voluntary noontime class to learn more about our company? Well, they start coming to those classes, and that's kind of how it grew from there. So I don't know, it's not perfect. I naturally can relate a little bit easier, I think, for the student athlete, just because my coaching background and athletic background, but I don't show them any favoritism because other students have their own distractions and stress going on in their lives. And I just offer to help, and I pin them down a little bit. I don't say, can I help you? I say, how may I help you? And I'll just pause. And if they can't come up with a way I can help them, then I just say, well, hey, hang in there. And if you change your mind and you know of a specific thing, I can give you more time and more attention. I can give you some practice and feedback on these assignments before you turn them in. There's a lot of things I can do, but if you don't want those or can't accept those, then until you're ready. When the learner's ready, the teacher's always there, but it's my job to help make them ready and open to learning.
Now, relating to the current remote teaching situation, we have a question related to that. And I know that you all are back to in person somewhat, but still have students who are learning virtually as well.
Yeah.
This instructor says that they depend a lot on trust and the support of their academic support program, but feel that they don't have as much of that now that the students are remote. And are wondering if you can recommend a way to build some trust with the audience in that virtual environment.
Yeah, it's very difficult. I've got 2 business ethics classes this semester. One of them has students present in the classroom. We all wear masks and we still are social distance. Occasionally if someone is sick or for some reason been quarantined or for some other reason, they have the ability, and I'm willing to do it, is they'll participate via Zoom, live Zoom. I've got another class that I have a few students live in the classroom. I've got 5 students that participate by Zoom live, and I've got 3 students that participate by recorded Zoom sessions. That's tough because building trust requires me getting feedback from the students, and which means that this is tough during this presentation today. If I can't get eye contact or watch body language, real difficult for me to measure full attention and engagement. So other ways I can measure that, hopefully, is the quality of the work that they're turning in, because business ethics is kind of complex and new to them. And at first they all kind of start off slow, but if I start to see the quality of work turned in by certain individuals, I can at least make an assumption they're paying attention in class to be able to do that assignment. And I think they must be more comfortable with me. I do always ask anybody's got any questions versus putting them up in front of the class or over Zoom and having them ask that way. I'll ask them to communicate by email or phone call, but email primarily the question. But I always go a step further and say, but before you send that email, make sure the opening line tells me who you are, what class you're in, what's the purpose of this email message, and what is it you would like for me to be able to do for you as a result of this email message. If I can't read that into it, why would I want to give up more value of me being around home and going out to the farm and playing with my dogs to figure out what you're wanting? So I just try to do that as often as I can. I don't know the answer to that question per se. I struggle a little bit with that because I can definitely tell you the students that are only participating by Zoom, especially the recorded Zoom sessions, I have no idea on their regular daily attention or engagement. The only thing I can judge is, are they doing the work on time, and are they asking any questions for clarification by email or some other way? Otherwise, I just make an assumption that they've got enough engagement that they're going to do what they got to do to get a grade. And I don't like, that's the part about Zoom and others I don't like. I would like to at least have met them in person a few times because these trust building skills I learned in business, most of us build trust with other people, but it happens over a long period of time. The first time we interact with somebody, if I leave here and go downtown Perry, if it's somebody I don't know, if I walk by them or whatever, I don't have a lot of trust with them if I don't recognize them. And especially if they look a certain way or act a certain way, fear of the unknown sets in and I kind of shy away from them. But over time, if I keep going downtown day after day and I keep seeing them and I don't get hurt, I trust more. But these trust building skills helps you build trust in probably 2 or 3 minutes or less if you just get in the habit of applying as many as you can. They're not that difficult. Empathy can be communicated with I see and I understand. Propriety is communicated just by you matching up to the identity of what they expect of a high quality professional instructor. That's why I'm bound and determined. I try to be at class a few minutes early. I start class on time and we never go over class. And we always end before or on time. But we start on time, end on time. That means they understand I value their time and how important it is. On the assignments, I always give them a certain amount of time to turn it in, but I let them know up front. If they want to contact me ahead of time and ask for feedback on their assignment, I'll give it to them. That way they have a chance to do better work if they want to. But there's not an easy way. I don't know. It's hard unless just over time you're going to have some trust, even if you've never met them before. I go back to my day as a freshman at Oklahoma State University. Most of my classes had 400 students in it. I don't think the instructor even knew who I was.
Well, speaking of time, we're getting close to the end. I want to see if we can squeeze in 1 or 2 final questions because we're getting great audience participation today. We answered one of the questions. We had a question about students and email messages, and it sounds like you just lay out the expectation. And that's an effective way to have them communicate with you in the way that you want over email. We had another question here about cheating and how do you handle students who are caught cheating, because that's a major violation of trust.
Yes, and so if I even speculate that 2 students are cheating by doing work together or whatever it might be when they're not assigned to do that or they don't have the privilege to do it, typically, even if I speculate it, I will find a way either to invite them to class ahead of time, or usually after class. I see the students as they're leaving, and all of my students are used to me saying, "Hey, have a good day," and hope you do well on this or that or the other your next class. And if I see these 2 students, I'll say, "Hey, I've got something I think I can help you with. I need to visit with you guys real briefly." They'll stay behind. I take them separate and I just start asking questions. I tell them that I'm speculating. There's enough evidence for me to speculate, I guess, on whether or not they're working together. If some of their answers appear to be real close to the same or identical to the same, and I'll ask them, give them a chance to be honest and tell me. I've noticed when I do that, I don't see any evidence anymore. If it is something that they've definitely done, and I feel like I've got enough evidence to show that they've done it, I have to turn them into the administration building and student affairs. I've only had to do that once in my teaching career. Most of the students most of them I tell them I can pick up on it because they have to write these cases, and I don't let them start sentences off with the word I. I tell them it's not an English essay, but I don't want to see I being the first word in the sentence. And I want to see you somehow connect the theory to a real life example in your own life, whether that's your current classes you're going through or your athletic life or whatever. So connected, and that's where I pick up on pretty much. It's got to be pretty much personal. But I have had speculation a few times, and then I caught 2 students cheating where I had to turn them in.
All right, we have a few thank yous coming through of just appreciating you sharing all of your insights and
Appreciate it.
them with us. I have one final question for you that seems like a perfect one to end today on. Do you have any resources for instructors that might want to look further into trust and adult learning and effective communication?
Yes. And what I might do, Danny, if you will send that question as an email or whatever. Going way back, this is even before Stephen Covey's time. Of course, Covey's stuff is excellent. 7 Habits for Highly Effective People, excellent. There's some other books out there that focus on trust itself. I actually picked up most of my deep understanding by going through a seminar. At that time, it was put on by Wilson Learning. Larry Wilson was the individual's name, and so he might have a book out there, but the course was actually on counselor selling. And these trust building skills were what they called relating skills. So when you were go out and call on customers, cold call on customers or whatever, if you understood these skills and could apply them, they were teaching salesmen that's more of a counselor approach versus a traditional salesman approach, trying to make somebody buy something they don't want. So anyway, we adopted that at Ditch Witch, and we created our own sales training program and incorporated in the trust building skills into that. But Larry Wilson is a guy you could maybe research on. I know he's passed away, I'm sure, but good information. And I'll do some other thinking. I've got some other books. I read a lot of Max Dupree, and he's also passed away, but Leadership Jazz, and some of his other books that he wrote. Peter Senge, Senge. The Fifth Discipline was a book that he wrote, but he talks about the importance of trust in there. I'll have to think about it, and I've got some information.
No problem. Well, I will. I'll make sure to send you that question.
Okay.
Have you list out some of your answers, and we can include those resources alongside the recording on our blog.
That
we'll
sounds
email
good.
that out to everyone.
That sounds great.
Okay. Well, that brings us to the end of our time for today. I want to thank our audience for being so engaged. Thank you again, Professor Dolezal. And if you do have other questions for us, you can reach us at marketing@hawkslearning.com. And I hope everyone has a fantastic rest of their day.
Yes, sir. Thank you very much. Have a good day.